Hello, today is December 3rd. This is a meeting of the Conservation Commission's Land Use Subcommittee. We have with us today Aaron Jock and Dave Zomack, who work for the town of Amherst, and absent at the current moment is Michelle Lobb and Bruce Stedman. Bruce will not be able to join us.
Michelle's not going to be able to join us either. She just messaged me.
Okay, so we're going to proceed to discuss a couple of items that are on the agenda. I don't think we need a quorum because we're not a decision-making body. And whatever we do today will be communicated to them and we will pick it up with them when they return. So we have an agenda, which is to review, the first item is to review comments received on draft policies. I have not received any. The second item was native land acknowledgement language. Bruce Stedman was going to take a stab at, that's a bad language, sorry. He was going to draft some language about that, was not with us, so we'll pass on that. Third item is community gardens, and I have drafted some language for us to consider. The next item is bird banding, and I started a process of coming up with some language for that. Forest management is the fifth item. The sixth item is agenda for next meetings. And the seventh item is policy topics before the commission, and we have listed what they've already voted on, what's in front of them, and the dates of each. So at the upcoming Conservation Commission meeting, they will be voting, for example, on conservation land rules and regulations. And then we always have opportunity for public comment, and Aaron will keep me abreast if we have any members of the public with us. So with that, Aaron has provided a map of mountain bike trail and sensitivity of those trails. Although not on the agenda, I would ask that we be able to look at that and talk about it. She just sent it out, Dave. I don't know if you've seen it, but it basically
Yeah,
says that all trails have sensitive areas except Mount Pollux and the Wildwood Conservation Area, both of which are marked in yellow in red circles. So Aaron, I have a question. It occurred to me in thinking about mountain bikes that one of the factors is slope. And mountain bikes with their knobby tires and locomotion happening on the rear wheel are sources for erosion in some places and also rutting in some places. And that disturbance of the soil takes place more on slopes than on the flat. And if we were going to think about where mountain bikes might be prohibited, it would be useful to know which trails have um, considerable slope. I don't know where they are. So I'll just ask for your comment and Dave's.
Um, yeah, so obviously Mount Pollux has some slopes. I'm not sure about the Wildwood Conservation Area. The other thing about, these mapping exercises, um, obviously it's a desktop exercise. So with Wildwood, I can't say definitively that there aren't actually wetland resource areas on the site, but it's just what's mapped on the state level. So um, in terms of potential data that might be available to look at slopes, there's contours and topography data that I could potentially pull in for these two sites to see if there is anything concerning as far as slopes are concerned. I would think that Mount Pollux would be a candidate for having some slope issues, topography issues.
Yeah, most people think of on Pollux as going up to the top where the view is nice. But there's that trail that goes from the parking area south. And from the top, there's a trail that goes, I'm not quite sure what direction that would be, north, and then it varies from that. But are you thinking to limit mountain bikes the way the policy is written right now? Everything's open to mountain bikes and horses. And we reserved opportunity to close trails if needed. What's your thought?
I can chime in there a little bit, Alex. Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I mean, it's it's challenging as our conversations about hunting have been. Um, I hear you on slopes, but as you all were talking, my mind was like, going to the our two major trails are the KC Trail and the Robert Frost Trail. And many of those in areas in lowland areas are very flat, but they go along wetlands and streams like the Hop Brook, the Plum Brook, the Fort River, and through Lawrence Swamp. And a lot of them are, very muddy, very wet, exception during drought periods. I'm not thinking of this year and this fall and all that, but by and large, they're very wet because they follow these stream courses. So, when I think of topography, I mostly think of the trails on the Mount Holyoke Range. Um, Mount Pollux, again, Aaron, notwithstanding what you said about this is a tabletop desktop exercise. I mean, most of Mount Pollux is actually pretty dry. Um, but I think of the KC Trail and the Robert Frost Trail and some of our literary trails, they're soggy all year long. So so when I think, Alex, to your point about ruts and erosion, you know, um, I think of boardwalks too. Practically, what do mountain bikers want to do? Some of them actually find our boardwalks challenging and they use them and they ride over them and it's kind of fun. And we've actually had a fair bit of input from them. They prefer, if you will, the boardwalks to be I'm going to get this wrong, but not the long, thin boards, if you will, 8, 9 feet long, because their tires can go between them. They prefer the small, so you have the what do you call them, bog bridging, and then short boards on top so that they can, ride over them. So anyway, my point being, sometimes they like to ride on them. Sometimes they don't, and when they don't, they make a new track on either side, and that's often boggy and wet and soggy. So it's a challenge for me. I don't know how we kind of pick and choose and say, because one part of a trail might be soggy and then it dries out as it gets into a different soil type and a different forest type. The Mount Holyoke Range, by and large, is actually pretty dry, except where our trails follow or cross some of the streams and rivulets that come down from the Mount Holyoke Range, the top of the hill. So I don't know how we divvy this up and say, oh, some of the trails are open, some of them aren't. The last point I'll make is, mountain bikers have established themselves up on the Mount Holyoke Range pretty firmly. So for our lands up on the range, it's going to be pretty hard to say no mountain biking. Mountain biking stops here when our trails kind of interface and blend with those of DCR. So those are just my kind of random thoughts as you all were talking and I was staring at this map, but I'm open to the conversation.
I
You
should
think my
also,
go ahead, Aaron.
um, the Orchard Arboretum was also outside of resource area, but I didn't include that one specifically because um, being an arboretum, I didn't want to presume that we would want to be encouraging mountain biking there, just as a side note, sidebar.
An arboretum used mostly by seniors over the age
Right,
of 75.
right.
Let's invite the mountain bikers there. Yeah. Um,
Uh, Another aspect is if we disallow mountain bikes, that calls for a sign.
mm,
And so signage is an issue that you're working on, Dave, to make sure that's standard, but there's a cost to closing a trail to a certain use. That
yeah.
cost would be signage and the time and effort that your staff puts into establishing the signage.
Right, and to that point, Alex, you even go further. In my mind, the more important thing or the more costly thing is, a reality. Do we have the staff to even enforce it, like the dog rules?
Yeah.
Um,
So the way the policy is now written, it's sort of like if it's not broken, why fix it? And just because an area is wet and a bike makes a rut doesn't mean there's harm being done necessarily. There could be a rut and it could have water in it that doesn't go anywhere, that it doesn't
mhm,
cause erosion. And
mhm.
my biggest experience is my own property up in New Hampshire, which is just has a road that is open. The town has maintains a right of way, and there are trail bikes, motorcycles that use it. And I walk the slopes on the road and see that no matter where they are always overturning a rock and always loosening up the soil. And then if we have a big downpour, those areas wash. And it just comes with the bikes. They're not mountain bikes, they're trail bikes,
Mm.
four wheelers, and they both cause the same thing. And there's some movement of soil that doesn't, the road is still passable, so that I haven't gone around Amherst trails to see what the condition is. So my thought comes from my own property in New Hampshire. So that we do have people, staff on the trails, and my thought would be that maybe the best way forward is to leave the policy the way it is, and if an area has a problem, take care of it, either with temporary signage, taking a caution tape and a couple of stakes and forcing bikes to go around an area, or something, some easy fix like that, rather than closing off the
Prohib
whole system
Yeah,
of trails and having to put up signage and so on and so forth.
yeah,
They're gonna, as you said, they're well established on the ridge,
yeah.
and
I'm I'm probably fine with that. I think again, this policy can be revisited if an issue arises. I will say the one thing that, and again, I apologize, I did not review the draft, but one thing that does occur to me is that I do think we could say we do not allow um, changes to trails or anything that enhances our trails for mountain bikers, because that's one of the things they like to do is they like to make jumps. They like trees over trails because that's an obstacle they like to traverse and get over. So maybe saying something about, you know, mountain bikers are not allowed to change, affect, enhance, whatever, or manipulate our trails in any way, shape, or form, or something to that effect, so that we
so
don't
that,
get people building mountain bike trails or mountain bike features on our trails.
good point. That, those rules are coming up for a vote tonight.
Or tomorrow
Oh,
night, you mean?
tomorrow night, excuse me. And that, what you're suggesting is not included. It's a little late to be putting that in there now. And
Well, couldn't it just be a friendly amendment tomorrow night?
yeah, could be a friendly amendment
Yeah,
tomorrow night.
yeah. And that's an easy add, but I think that would be good. So we're friendly to the mountain bikers, but don't start manipulating our trails to serve your recreational pursuit, you know.
Yep, so I can come up, or Erin can come up with some language. Erin has her hand up. Yes, Erin?
I was just gonna, just, I'm trying to remember from our previous meeting. I know we had talked about horses or horseback riding being at your own risk. Did we want to say something similar for mountain biking? Like mountain biking is at your own risk? Because,
I think that's the first sentence in the policy.
oh, okay. Thank you. I just wanted to refresh my memory on that.
No, that came up last time and I stuck it
Okay.
in there.
Okay.
Right?
And then it says it has the at your own risk sentence, and then it has all trails are open to both. And then the third sentence says that the commission reserves the opportunity to make exception to that if warranted or something like that.
Mhm. Okay.
So, you know, if there's an area in the Holyoke Range, for example, where mountain bikes are really giving a particular area a hard time, it's steep, they're causing a problem. There could be a temporary closure or something to let that area heal.
Mhm. Sounds good.
That was what I had in mind. So if we're done with that, the where we're leaving it is we have an action item that when this comes up tomorrow night, that we're gonna have a friendly amendment. And right after this call, I'll draft some language and it will be essentially what Dave just said,
Sure.
that trails
I
will
th
not be amended to
Yeah, and I think procedurally, Alex, I don't even think it needs to be a friendly amendment. It simply could be part of the discussion before the vote, because typically a friendly amendment happens after a motion has been made. I move to
yeah,
approve so just add it in early on, and then somebody hopefully will move and say, yes, I move to
okay.
approve such and such, and then you don't even need a friendly amendment. It's already been done.
Okay. While we're on this topic of tomorrow night, the rules are going to get voted on, and one of those is a change in hunting. And
Mhm.
I know I was thinking about how to handle this, and there's a couple of, I want to get prepared, Aaron, to show them the map with the buffers if we need to. So and I want to talk about this with you, is how to go forward with that vote. We could just simply bring it up for a vote, not have much discussion, not have the subcommittee open it up for discussion. If a board member has a question and it leads to discussion about hunting or any other thing, address it. And be prepared to, show that map on how we made a decision. The other thing is to force a discussion about hunting and make sure that everybody has read it and is aware of it and explain how we made the decision, which will take more time. Um, and I thought the best thing to do is talk on this subcommittee about how to approach that vote. And my gut tells me to take the quickest route. I just don't know which that is.
I mean, I think that there's some value in stating one of the changes to our rules is that we've done an analysis to determine, to try to have our trails be safe. And this is the backstory of that. And here's a figure that shows what our research kind of the results of our research. And this is the reason we came to this decision. I mean, I just recently talked with a hunter who was hunting on town water supply and watershed lands, and those lands are open to hunting. So it's not as if we're saying all town lands are restricted. It's the lands that the Conservation Commission has care, custody, and control of with our trail systems. So there are other places to do this in the town of Amherst where it's permitted. But because of our trail systems and safety reasons, we've determined that, this is our recommendation. And, I do think there's some value in highlighting that in a public meeting.
Mm.
That way it's out there and we have put our um, uh, rationale, scientific rationale for why behind it. And then, if folks want to discuss, we can. If nobody commented, then, I think it is what it is. But I just think that leaving it quiet might be like, hey, wait a second, I didn't know about that, when we get down to the hearing part. And I wouldn't want to open a can of worms at the 11th hour when we have a hearing open.
I agree with everything you just said, and I'm all for informing people. That will cost at least 15 minutes. So we have a pretty full agenda, and I just wanted to put it out there. I frankly would, I think the quickest route is to bring it up. Because if we don't and we have a last minute, oops, wait a minute, that will take at least the same amount of time, if not more, because it'll cause everybody else to think.
Mhm.
And Andre's a hunter. Um, there are hunters on our staff, on our commission. Um, and I feel more comfortable bringing it up rather than appearing to hide something.
I agree with both of you. Yeah.
So if
Not,
we could be prepared, I don't know if we need any other um, material to explain our process other than those maps. Yeah,
Is this the figure that you were looking for?
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can be prepared to share this. It's not super pretty, but I think it tells the story.
yeah. I'm just interested in the story.
Yeah.
We can
not,
always blow it up for somebody who wants to see more.
Mhm.
And then they may say, well, why archery? And we'll have to explain that. But we'll just see how it goes. But it will take time from in the agenda. And um, we usually have some minutes before the first hearing where we do other business, and we may eat up some of that.
mhm.
Yeah, and that's fine. I don't think we have any like land use applications, at least nothing that's come in yet. So I think that window of time would just be reports from Dave
Yeah.
and
I
this.
just I just got an email from, hold on, I'm gonna read it. I just got an email from um, Rachel. And I'm just gonna have to back out. Let's see what she says. Are you meeting today? I saw the link and I've been trying to join since noon. This is from Rachel. Let me
Weird.
know if there's something else I can do. I have no problem with her joining.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I don't see any attendees.
what should I, do you want to send her a link? She didn't copy you on this.
Okay.
Is that it? Is your
Oh,
silence a
oh, there
yes?
she is. I see. She's here now. I don't know why. Rachel, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. I don't know why you didn't pop in as an attendee, but
Oh,
here you are
okay.
now.
Okay, cool.
Can't see you, but so we'll take a moment to just tell Rachel what we have done without going through everything. Can you hear me, Rachel?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you have a copy of our agenda? Rachel? Am I on mute? No.
No.
Oh, we can hear you.
Rachel?
We lost her. She was there.
So are you there, Rachel?
I'm here.
Do you have a copy of the agenda?
I saw it. Yes.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah,
Yes.
she said she saw it. Yep.
Okay, so we have received no comments on any draft policies. Bruce is not here, who was going to have a draft on native land acknowledgement. using UMass as a template. We're gonna come back to community gardens. And what we did was we just reviewed mountain biking with a map that Aaron put out that shows sensitive areas on trails. The only areas not being sensitive are Mount Pollux and the Wildwood Conservation Area. And where we left that is that the existing policy is, first sentence says that horseback riding and mountain biking are at the user's risk. Second sentence says all trails are open to both. Third sentence says that the Conservation Commission reserves the opportunity to, and I'm paraphrasing, to close areas as needed. And what Dave suggested is that we have in the discussion tomorrow night that we add some language that says that trails will not be modified to enhance mountain biking, such as building jumps and things of that sort. So we'll have I'll call it an amendment to the existing language prior to taking a vote.
Question for you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm gonna turn up my volume. I had it way down when I was working on something else.
Okay. Within the mountain bike community, there's been a lot of attention towards adaptive riders, adaptive users. Those are people who might be partially paralyzed that are using mountain bikes that enable them to use trails where they're not able to before. And the adaptive there's now an adaptive use trail standard, which would, some trails just are not, most trails are not usable by that user group, but it can be like widening the trail to 4 feet in places. So that was just, you know, a contextual comment about that, about modifying trails. I understand not jumps and things like that, because that's extreme, but
I think Dave is interested in not modifying trails to enhance bike use.
okay.
But I would put the caveat that we do have some trails that meet one or more standard for accessibility. So to some degree, for an adaptive mountain biking program, you know, the new trails at Hickory Ridge
Right.
will meet that standard. The Kevin Flood Trail at Buffer's Pond, the trail at Larch Hill would minimally meet that. So I think that's fine. That could be a goal of ours, Rachel, that, you know, one of my goals for 25 is to really do some work on our ADA trails. Clearly Hickory will be the shining star when that is done, but we've got some other shorter trails that could use some work. And that's why we're asking for CPA dollars. So yeah, I think we should try to, you know, reach a goal of offering those trails where we can. But clearly a trail up through Lawrence Swamp is probably never going to meet an adaptive mountain bike standard.
Yeah.
So sounds good.
Okay. So we have, I think we're pretty much done with that. And
We were moving on to hunting. I think we were talking about hunting when
Yep.
Rachel joined.
so there was a discussion about how to handle the vote tonight. And it was decided that we will make sure that people are aware that the rules will change the policy about hunting, including archery, and close conservation land entirely to hunting rather than being silent about it and waiting for some commissioner to raise a question. So that process will add some time, and we'll probably have less time for other business prior to the first hearing. But it was decided that we should go out of our way to make sure that commissioners are aware of that change when it comes time for a vote. And we will make available The map that we've used, which you haven't seen, which we should probably show you if Aaron can bring it up. This is the map that we produced that put a 500-foot buffer on either side of every trail, where we decided that most conservation areas are covered by that buffer,
Mhm.
and the 500 foot buffer comes from mass wildlife as the distance from an occupied dwelling that where discharge of a firearm is not allowed.
Mhm.
We just wanted, somebody says, why'd you pick that? And it was, we borrowed it because mass wildlife made a policy decision that that's an appropriate buffer rather than us making one up. That's
Mhm.
as simple as that. And then there was Lawrence Swamp, just for background, had some areas that aren't, you can see the green. Yeah, that's Lawrence Swamp. Lawrence Swamp has several parcels, which by themselves aren't separately named. And to exclude them and allow hunting there becomes an administrative nightmare of posting and enforcement. So the decision was made to just close all areas. And so I'll stop there if you have any questions.
So, so to support that, would there no hunting signs would be posted then on the conservation property?
Yeah, so we had a discussion about that in the past. The only notification has been on the town website where hunting was allowed on conservation land, naming parcels.
Mhm.
And there was discussion about posting and what it would cost the department to do that. And we tried hard to not make that a criteria for decision making. So,
Yeah,
right,
we'll have to do it. Bottom line is we'll have to do it. We'll have to do it at trailheads. We'll have to do it on the website. And yeah. Uh, Alex, confirm for me. You said something earlier that I thought indicated we left in bow hunting. I thought when we last left our
no,
conversation, we were saying,
no.
okay,
Archery, there is a phrase following the sentence, comma, including archery.
okay. Not to get sidetracked on it today, but I do think I'm going to need to I'm going to need to consider kind of how we get the word out if the commission goes for this, because, to some of our earlier conversations about these policies, um, we're like it or not, we're working a little bit of a bubble, right? We don't have 30 people that come to a Concom meeting. Sometimes the Gazette will follow, a interesting or controversial project and write about Shutesbury Road or Hickory Ridge or whatever it is. This likely will be picked up by the media, so I'm going to have to kind of be prepared with some answers for the media. And I, in other towns, when towns have moved in this direction, it's certainly been. I remember Northampton. There was a big controversy in Northampton a few years ago. But anyway, we'll be prepared.
I think
Yeah.
Northampton has closed their their conservation land to hunting, except one along the Connecticut River.
Mhm. Yep. So we're following suit there. Go ahead, Rach.
I ran into this a little bit with a client of mine, a private school. They have 30 acres of land that people informally hunted on, but then the school was built and the kids were outdoor classrooms. And a hunter showed up with a crossbow and pointed at the kids and said, "I can hunt here." And they're like,
Oh my God.
but I talked to the state and they said, yeah, you can hunt on private land. I don't know about public, but you can hunt on private land if there isn't you need the signage. If you don't have the signage, everyone in the state can hunt.
Right. So
Hmm.
there are other town lands where hunting is allowed. There's private land in Amherst where hunting is allowed. And so it's not like we're taking away all hunting. And the motivator for us is we have, I thought 80 miles of trails, but I just saw a number, Dave, of 140 miles.
It's the new analysis that Aaron did, 140 miles of trails.
Yeah. So as as our trails increase and during COVID our use increased, we think. We're trying to keep people safe. And we've never had an accident. We don't want an accident. Accidents during hunting are actually low. Well, when Dave and I were out looking at Hop Brook beavers, a guy came along dressed in hunter orange, and he explained to us that he'd been sprayed with pellets by a shotgun. And not there, not then, at another time. Aaron?
I was just gonna say it might be good for us to start thinking about a public hearing date. And just because as we have this conversation tonight, I think another important reminder is in order for us to officially implement these policies, we have to hold a public hearing and take public comment on them. And so to point to people and say, like, this is our initial draft that we're voting on, but there will be a public hearing, at the beginning of the year in 2025, where the public can come and comment on these. Or they can obviously attend our land management subcommittee meetings to comment. So just to make sure that we remind people of that.
Good point.
So why don't we make it a point to say just that? And you could be the person who says it when this comes up for a vote tomorrow night. And in terms of announcement, hunting season, deer season in Massachusetts is about to open.
It's
And
already open.
if this gets passed tomorrow night, you might, Dave, consider a banner on the website. Or
Well,
hold off until the public hearing.
yeah, it's not going to be in effect until we have a public hearing. Under state law, it says in order
That's
for us
right.
to establish it, we have to have the public hearing first.
So,
And what follows the public hearing is a vote. The hearing is closed, then the commission
Right.
votes.
Right.
So how long does hunting season go for deer?
end of
in Ma-
December.
Okay, so we should be fine in January. That hearing would take place in January. We get people through this hunting season, and then, in the new year, as Aaron said, if the commission moves in this direction.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
and then you got a whole
kinda-
year, you got a whole
kind
year to post and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
it's much
Okay.
cleaner. Yeah. I didn't
So
really want to go out there and go, hey, stop hunting
I
mid-December.
one step at a time.
Right.
Sometimes baby steps are good. Okay, so
Hypothetically, if someone has private land within 500 feet of a trail, would the hunter be allowed on the private land? That's,
our buffer is a decision-making tool that doesn't affect private property.
yeah, okay, just making sure.
So I want to move on and go to community gardens. And just for Rachel's sake, the last time we met, I proposed that community gardens remain under the purview of the Conservation Commission, but from a distance. And that it be left to the Conservation and Development Department to administer community gardens, set their policy, continue to take care of um, uh, applications for people, wanting to use them. And so I drafted some language, which I want to share on the screen, that basically would hand it over to the department. Um, Aaron's not involved on a day-to-day basis with community gardens. It's other staff of Dave's. And that the commission simply reserve that if the area of the community gardens are expanded, they've got to come in for a proposal and approval by the commission. And I also wrote in a condition, which you'll see, about water. So if I could, with that, we'll hold questions until you see the language. And now I got to figure out, oh, there's share. Okay, here's what I was drafting. And I borrowed language from our previous policy to kick this off, and I'll give you a minute to read it.
Is there water provided now to the community gardens?
Yeah, hold on. Let's let everybody read it.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm gonna hold off a little bit on water. And after the link, it says that they currently occupy so many square feet. And last time we talked about that, Dave said, rather than me going out and measuring, that Aaron could come up with a number and on the GIS system, so that needs to happen. I just put in square feet because that can be easily transferred to acres, and I just put in square feet, so there's nothing magic about that, whatever Aaron wants to do.
Sure, she could probably do it while we're talking. No pressure though, Aaron. Can
And
we?
then and then there's the saving clause where the commission reserves opportunity to approve any expansion and calls for a written proposal to the commission by the department or the users. And Rachel, the Fort River Garden is a community situation where the town has relationships with a group, several groups that actually administer the garden and the rules, and there's a relationship between the department and that group. So for all I know, the users might propose to expand, and I'll let the Department of Conservation and Development handle that with them, but reserving that a proposal must come before the commission for expansion, for giving the commission opportunity to review and approve prior to any expansion. And that way the commission doesn't give up its mandate to care for conservation land. It's just giving up the day-to-day administration, and we never get an annual report from the garden. And frankly, working with staff on policy is difficult. So better for us, I think, to just back away, let the department handle it, and stay poised if somebody wants to expand it. Clear on?
Rachel had a comment a minute ago or a question.
I'm getting to water, but I wanted to cover these points first. Are we okay now so far?
Yeah, I have a few questions, but I was going to wait until after Rachel.
You done, Rachel?
I just wondering if the existing condition of the two gardens have water sources now.
I'm gonna get to water.
Okay.
So before we get to water, two quick comments on this draft. One is that this only speaks to the two existing gardens. What happens if the department says, oh, we'd really like to put a community garden at Podic Catherine Cole?
You need to come in with a written proposal.
Okay.
I just drafted that. There's nothing magic about the language. We can alter it right now.
For any expansion of either community garden.
Okay, so for any expansion of community gardens.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I have a little bit of hesitation of the next couple of words, by the users or the department. So user X group says, boy, there's that vacant, field over there. do they have a direct line to the commission to propose a community garden there? Because that's kind of how this reads to me. Or the Fort River Farm folks say, we want the rest of Fort River Farm, and they can propose that directly to the commission. That's how I read this. So that,
I was uncomfortable with that, but I don't fully understand the relationship between the groups at Fort River and the department. And
I would rather simplify this for any expansion of community gardens. Wait, for any expansion of community gardens by the Department of Conservation and Recreation, a written proposal must be filed, and let us work with Group X, really let it be the department, things funnel through the department, because we get some kind of wacky ideas
Mhm.
sometimes, and I just don't want to waste the commission's time or staff time saying, hey, we want to, we get some wild ideas, let me tell you. And this seems to then give the users a direct route. We've had to push back on the users a little bit on some things. So I'd rather have it just come through us, and then we can screen out some of the wacky early ideas. And if there's something, I mentioned Podic, Catherine Cole, Alex, because we went out there months ago and said,
yeah,
this might be a reasonable place for some sort of a
and
garden growing experience out there.
yeah, it's got a water source available right there, parking,
Yeah.
prior agricultural field right adjacent to parking. It's a great place for a community.
Yeah. And then I guess, then I would, I'm curious about water as well. So that's kind of where Rachel and I ended up, at water.
Okay, so if we're done with all the language, and I appreciate the modifications, because I literally did this in the 15 minutes before the meeting.
Mhm.
Water. And my thought goes, this is background for Rachel. Water at both community gardens is provided in different ways. And I'm going to go to Amethyst Brook first. There is a storage container which gets filled through the cooperation of a local farmer for use by the gardeners. And from that tank, there has been a long fire hose kind of a thing that can stretch a long ways. And then there's a tap where individual gardeners can go and fill a bucket and tote it to their garden spot, bucket by bucket by bucket. At Fort River, there is a surface well, which is operated by a hand pump, and people fill up their bucket at that one source, and then have to carry it to their garden spot, which may require more than one bucket. And I talked to Dave some time ago about handicapped accessibility to water. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine who has a garden spot in Northampton at the community gardens by the old state hospital. And they provide water, I think it's within 15 feet, it might be 12 feet of any garden spot. And they have an underground water system with taps, which we don't. And I'm not calling for that. But in the end, what she told me is that lugging 5 gallons of water, that's 40 pounds or less. And she said she has a bad shoulder.
Mhm.
And there are others like that, that if they didn't have a water source close by where they could run their hose directly to their garden spot, she would have an accessibility problem. So I wrote this sentence with the idea of trying to make water accessible to those that have medical problems, particularly. And that's the background.
Mhm.
I'm not going to venture into how that's accomplished. That's up to the department. But I was trying to make the garden more accessible by
Would-
making. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
would that statement be helpful to say to ensure that water is accessible to any user? The department will work with members of the community garden to provide access to water within 15 feet of any garden. So then it gives the department the flexibility to do what needs to do for the individual user.
I'm gonna respond just by saying we've already delegated. And when we don't use that term, maybe we should, but up top it says both community gardens are managed by the department.
So I'm going to weigh in here. I'm kind of troubled by this last sentence. I know you just drafted it, Alex, and I hear all the reasons that you did, and I like most of it. But to me, when you get down into the second part of that sentence, comma, a water source must. Now, to me, must is almost the equivalent of shall. Shall be provided, must be provided within 15 feet of any garden plot. I mean, that is a very tall order. It's really an unfunded mandate in my mind. There's no funding for that. I mean, um,
Oh, well,
pun intended. Um,
I'm punishing you.
yeah, I just think that is a very, I think it's a very, on one hand, the commission is saying, oh, it's all up to you, department, except we are mandating, I mean, 15 feet of any garden plot. That is a very tall order. Then you get into, well, if we're providing water, okay, that's one thing, but what if somebody's in a wheelchair? Does that mean we have to have an accessible path to and from the water source to their plot? And what if we have 5 different users? I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. You have over 40 users at Fort River Farm, and 5 of them have disabilities, mobility issues. Do you have to provide an accessible path to and from the water to allow them access to get to the water? I mean,
I actually think those pathways at Fort River already exist.
I don't think they'd meet ADA standards, though. They're mostly wood chips. Wood chips do not meet ADA standard. So
Well,
I think this would be better, say, the department will make every effort
um,
to provide water to all users, within the community gardens or something like that, so that it gives us some flexibility, because must, in my mind, is pretty much the equivalent of shall. And there's no funding for this. And, if you look at Amethyst Brook, I mean, it is a long way.
yes,
Amethyst Brook Garden is bigger than Fort River, I think.
yes, by a lot.
And it's a long way to that water source. So
So
I would
I'm,
be more comfortable softening that, the department will do everything possible or everything in its power to provide a safe and consistent water source to gardeners within the 2 community gardens or something like that. And we'll make every effort we can. What might happen, let me just play this out. In the future, what we could do is work with the community garden organizers at both locations and say, hey, let's rearrange the garden a little so the accessible plots are closest to the water source. You know what I mean? So you don't have one way out in that corner because somebody liked that corner. Well, wait a minute, they have a shoulder issue or they're in a wheelchair or some mobility challenge. Let's encircle the water source with the accessible plots, something like that. Does that make sense?
I hear you, but I got 2 commissioners who are not with me today. Who haven't weighed in. This isn't going before the commission on
Okay.
Wednesday.
Well, yeah, I would just maybe
But
suggest coming up with some alternative language there.
I appreciate the I appreciate the town's comment.
Yeah, the
I'm
other thing this doesn't address is I would love to have something in there, something like irrigation from ponds, rivers, or via wells must be approved by the commission,
oh,
because there's nothing in there that really says, hey, we're going to stick a pump out in the Fort River and we're going to pump water from the Fort River to the community gardens, and the commission doesn't have anything to say about it, you know?
Yeah, you could, when I was a kid, when I lived in California, we had a 5,000 gallon water tank. It was up on the hill and it was gravity fed. It, it, it watered the stock, it watered the house. Um,
Yeah.
and
So anyway,
you could
want,
you could take that idea. I know sinking a well is $25,000 or more. You do not have that kind of a well. You've got an inexpensive well.
Mhm.
It still costs money, but there are grants available to deal with water. And so I'd like to hold off on that, but I would like to, I think frankly, your idea of having a storage tank, which you already have at Amethyst Brook, it's just not all that big. But if you had a large storage tank that you could somehow fill, even if it was to bring a swimming pool truck there to fill it, it could gravity feed, hoses could run gravity fed to the farthest garden.
Erin has her hand up. She might have to go because I don't know if you
Hi,
have a
Erin.
conflict or
Yeah,
no.
sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you guys, but I do have to run. I did assign Dave as host if you guys want to keep going, but I'm gonna just stay on as, you know, so I don't interrupt you guys, in case I close out and close the whole meeting. But I'll see you guys next time, okay?
Yeah,
What?
and when you, Erin, if I sent you a text that sometime when you have a moment today, I'd like to talk to you on the phone.
She's gone. She had to run to a site visit, I think. But let me I'll send you both those comments to the group, Alex, just about this. Have they seen this community gardens?
No, you're the first. I can type that right now and um, you can modify this. I'm just trying to think of words.
No pressure, Alex, no pressure.
Okay, Dave, help me make that sentence better.
I would say it's not really water storage facility, any water source connected, any water,
Or
any water source such as a well, pump in a stream or pond must be proposed in writing to the commission for review and approval. Any alternative water source for the gardens, such as a well or irrigation, you know, well, because yeah, if we just want to put a, big container down there, I don't really think I need to go through the commission. It's if we put a pump in a pond, or, think of Wentworth Farm. We used to have community gardens there, and they used to pump from the pond years ago, many years ago. So if we propose to do community gardens at Wentworth Farm, you'd want some sort of proposal for irrigation.
Why would you need to come to the commission for a well? you got a well and that didn't come to the commission.
Well, that was before this policy, number one, and number two, it's a sand, what do they call it? A sand.
Oh, so it's actually coming from the stream. It's,
Mm,
you're talking about bank storage.
well, it's coming from groundwater. I mean, you put in a $25,000-$30,000 well, you need electricity,
Yeah,
you
okay.
need a lot. I mean, we'd want that permitted. You don't want me going around going, hey, I'm going to put in a $30,000 well with a pump house
Yeah,
and bring electricity down.
I was thinking the well you have now doesn't require any of that. It's just,
You know, what's it called? A sand something. Yeah, those are about 500 to $1,000 to put in. And
any,
they sometimes go dry. So
any alternative? Do we need the word alternative? Any water source?
such as well or irrigation storage facility connected to a stream or pond. We're getting there.
Any alternative? Yeah, this is my typing stop right about here.
Anyway, you can work it through. And then yeah, let's for another time, if this isn't coming to the commission tomorrow night, let's think about that
It's not.
resource and let's think about that line before that. That must and shall makes me a little
Well, it should. It's intended to.
right. But I guess I would say that, you know, if we're doing that on community gardens, my logic would say, well, we're not mandating that trails are accessible to people in wheelchairs. Why are we holding the community gardens to a higher standard? It's again, it's kind of an unfunded mandate that the department will do the best it can to make as many trails as possible handicapped accessible, but there's no mandate to do it.
Yeah,
It's a
you
goal.
haven't, I haven't thought this through like an attorney would, but you have an application process. You have garden spaces available, and somebody could say, I'm handicapped and I'm not accessible because you haven't provided such and such. And so therefore you're excluding me.
Yeah, I just think there's a way to phrase that that's a little
Okay,
less onerous than 15 feet.
so
When I first read it, I thought it was a mechanism for deciding whether or not to expand the existing community gardens. It's like that would be criteria for expansion, but
let's let this rest.
okay.
Yeah,
I'm happy
Let's
we've
let it-
started the conversation and Rachel, this is pretty typical with how we've worked.
Okay,
Come up with some language, we kick it around, it takes a rest, we come back to it, it kicks around again. And usually what I do is I put in the header a note about when it was introduced. And we keep track in the header
cool.
of, you've seen that in the rules and regulations that went out. They get
It's
worked
helpful to
on a
see
lot
that.
before it goes to the commission.
Yeah,
And I'll adjust this, Dave, to put something in the header. I'm not gonna make a note on the discussion about must or anything like that. I'm just gonna note that when it was introduced. And that discussion will follow, and I'll send a copy to all of you. Hey, Rachel, do you want to join our subcommittee?
I am interested. I'm very interested in everything you guys are talking about.
we should.
You know, we would be welcome as far as I'm concerned.
I just need to get on
We-
my calendar so I don't schedule another meeting at the same time. That's the
And then what I'll do is I'll mail this out to Bruce and Michelle so they can see it. And I may add to that email what we talked about in terms of the vote tomorrow night so that Michelle knows.
I've probably got to leave in about 5 minutes. I didn't know if there was any other things you wanted to rattle through today.
Yeah, I'll just say what I've done on bird banding. We had that
Mhm.
permit come up with the bird banding for saw-whet owls
Mhm,
on Sweet Alice.
mhm.
I had a conversation, I thought what I would do is start to put together a policy on bird banding. And I need to get back to the actual application from the folks who are gonna operate on Sweet Alice. Um, and I had a conversation with folks in the migratory bird office at the Fish and Wildlife Service on what are the standard conditions in any permit issued by USGS for bird banding, because I don't want to duplicate them. And it would be things like an applicant must provide his branding permit as part of the application. Maybe the guy did that, I don't know. And I was considering for owls to not allow banding during the nesting season, because that's tends to be winter. And I didn't, it was either put in a restriction on how long a bird can be held, but erring on the side of the bird to not take away a lot of its feeding time at night and keeping it away from keeping the eggs warm.
Mhm.
That kind of thing. There wouldn't be very onerous.
Yep. It all sounds good.
Yeah,
Yeah, their program is for fall migrating saw-whet owls. It turns out they did not capture any saw-whets this fall. I bumped into the Bander fur kestrel. They did catch one barred owl, and that's it. No saw-whets,
Mm.
which is a little unusual. I can't remember what the rationale was for that, but anyway.
yeah,
But they don't band during the breeding season, or the nesting season. So
yeah. So,
Yep.
and then there was a thing about having participants or public presentations to participate at the nets rather than holding birds. I asked in Randy bands down on Silvio Conti land in Hadley.
Mhm.
I've gone down there and helped them. And, we put the birds in a bag and they're brought back to a central place for people to see. And I asked him, how long do you hold birds? Which was one of the things I was interested in putting in our policy. And does he band during the nesting season and all that kind of stuff? So I had about a 45-minute conversation with him, and I just haven't had time to write it up. So that's in the process.
Sure, all seems reasonable.
Agenda for next meeting, we're coming down on most of the stuff having gone to the commission. I still need forest management has gone to them. Rachel commented. And it's kind of in my court. I wanted to add a little context to the policy, and I haven't gotten around to that. So I'm a bottleneck on that. But I think we're in pretty good shape for meeting our deadline by the end of December, which
Mhm.
makes me happy. And then for Rachel's benefit, once this committee is dissolved, after I clap with joy, because it's like a second job, then there's a whole public hearing process, which I think you were on the phone for Dave talking about, or maybe
Yeah.
Aaron talking about that.
Yeah.
So it will go on in another phase for a couple of months after this subcommittee completes its work. And then after there's a public hearing, any public comments have to be considered. That'll come back to the subcommittee. Then it goes before the commission. And then once the commission votes, if they vote in approval, then it goes into effect. So that's the process. So we'll be dealing with this, I suspect, till March. But
I'm hoping February.
that would be fine.
I
But
think
that's
I think the only thing in any of these documents that has the chance of growing is really hunting. I think the other stuff is pretty innocuous. We may get a few farmers, but I think maybe dogs, but we haven't changed much with dogs, We've codified what is already out there. So
yeah.
dogs and hunting are probably the hot button issues in all of this. So
Yeah, and we've had comments on dogs on both sides, so
Mhm.
that's a constant.
Yep, for sure.
And if we're hearing from both sides, it means we're probably in a pretty good position.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Sounds good.
I'll wait for, I'll note in my email to everybody that we're looking for Aaron for some area, some measurement to stick in this, and I'll probably color those X's red too. That's a detail we don't need to talk about. Okay, so I'm gonna move that we close this hearing.
Or
and
this meeting, actually. It's just a
Yeah.
meeting, right? Yeah.
This meeting, excuse me. Then it is 1:16. So thank you very much, Dave, for your time. I know you're a busy guy. Appreciate your comments. Rachel,
We're
welcome.
all busy, and it's great to have Rachel. And be careful what you wish for, Rachel. And we'll suck you into every discussion we have.
Rachel has, Dave, you may not be aware of it, but Rachel has been a consistent commenter, and she's given us very good thought and really appreciate her comments. She is the most consistent commissioner to comment on these things.
I have heard you sing her praises many times. So
Yeah.
she is the most consistent for sure.
So,
It's almost like she's a professional in this field, you know. It's kind of weird that way, but no, she's got a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience. We appreciate it.
and I'm trying to make her blush, but I haven't seen it.
Well, I think there must be some color correction because I'm feeling very blushy.
Okay,
Thanks, guys.
time to say goodbye.
All right.
All right. I
Bye-bye.
will stop the recording
Thank you.
and have a great day, everyone.
You too.
Yeah.